The sun was slowly moving down behind the wide open fields, spreading a soft orange light across the ranch. The air felt heavy and quiet, like the land itself was holding its breath. Near the wooden fence, a horse lay on the ground, its body stretched out and still. Its chest moved up and down, but the breaths were weak and uneven. Every few seconds, the horse gave a faint shiver, as if the strength inside it was slipping away. Several people stood around the horse. They were ranch workers, men and women who had spent their lives around animals. They had seen sickness, injuries, and loss before. This time felt different. The horse was young and strong just days ago. It had run freely across the fields, its coat shining under the sun. Now, it could barely lift its head. A bucket of water sat nearby, untouched. Clean cloths and empty bottles lay scattered on the ground. Everything that could be tried had already been tried. One worker knelt and placed a hand near the horse's mouth, hoping to feel stronger breathing. He waited, then slowly pulled his hand back. "It's getting worse," he said quietly. The ranch owner, a middle-aged man named Mark, stood with his arms crossed. His face looked tired, lined with worry and sadness. This horse was not just part of his business. It was part of his life. He had watched it grow, trained it carefully, and trusted it on long rides across rough land. Seeing it like this made his chest feel tight. Mark shook his head slowly. "We did everything we could," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes told a different story. "Sometimes, no matter how hard we try, it's not enough." The workers exchanged glances. No one argued. They had all reached the same painful thought. One by one, they stepped back, giving the horse space. Some looked away. Others stared at the ground. Losing an animal was never easy, but staying to watch the final moments felt even harder. As the group slowly moved away, a man remained standing near the barn door. His name was Tom. Tom was a poor cowboy who worked on the ranch for small pay. He did not own land, horses, or fancy tools. His clothes were old but clean, and his boots showed years of hard use. He spent his days fixing broken fences, cleaning stalls, and helping wherever he was needed. Most people saw him as quiet and ordinary. Few knew how deeply he cared about the animals. Tom watched the horse from a distance. His hands tightened at his sides. He had noticed the horse acting strange days before, moving slower, eating less. He wanted to say something then, but he was just a worker, and no one asked for his opinion. Now, seeing the horse lying there, his heart felt heavy. When the last worker turned away, Tom took a slow step forward. "Tom," one of the workers said, surprised. "It's over. You should come inside." Tom did not respond. He walked closer to the horse, his steps careful and calm. He knelt down beside it and placed his hand gently on its neck. The skin felt cool, and the muscles barely moved under his touch. The horse's eyes were half open. They looked dull, but there was still a faint spark inside them. Tom swallowed hard. He remembered brushing this horse early in the morning, talking to it while the sun rose. He remembered how it stayed calm even during long, tiring days. This horse trusted people. It deserved more than being left alone. "I'm here," Tom whispered softly. His voice was low, meant only for the horse. "You don't have to fight by yourself." Behind him, Mark watched in silence. He wanted to tell Tom to stop. He wanted to believe this pain was already finished. But something about the way Tom touched the horse made him pause. Tom began to rub the horse's neck in slow, steady motions. Not rushed. Not nervous. Just gentle and patient. He leaned closer, letting the horse feel his presence. He did not think about time or rules. All he thought about was staying with the animal. A few minutes passed. The sky darkened slightly as evening approached. A cool breeze moved across the field, carrying the smell of dry grass. One of the workers sighed. "This won't change anything," he said under his breath. Tom ignored the comment. He matched his breathing with the horse's weak breaths. In and out. slow and calm. His hand kept moving in the same soft rhythm. Then something small happened. The horse's ear moved. It was barely noticeable, but Tom felt it under his hand. His heart jumped, but he did not react suddenly. He kept his movements calm, as if nothing had changed. "That's good," he whispered. "I'm still here." Mark stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the horse. He leaned forward, trying to see more clearly. The horse's chest rose again, just a little stronger than before. The workers fell silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Tom continued to speak softly, not with instructions or commands, but with warmth. He talked about the open fields, the early mornings, and the quiet nights in the stable. His words were simple, but they carried care and patience. Slowly, the horse shifted its head. The movement was weak, but it was real. Mark felt a strange feeling rise inside him. Hope, small and careful, but alive. "Wait," he said quietly. "Did you see that?" Tom nodded without looking up. "It's still with us," he said. "It just needs to feel safe." The horse took another breath, deeper than before. Its body stopped shaking as much. The change was small, but it was enough to make everyone hold their breath. No one had medicine left to give. No special tools. No expert advice. All that remained was a poor cowboy, a dying horse, and a quiet moment filled with care. And somehow, against all expectations, that seemed to matter more than anything else. Night slowly settled over the ranch, covering the fields in soft shadows. A few lanterns were lit near the barn, their warm light flickering in the gentle wind. Most of the workers had gone inside, but a small group stayed behind, unable to leave after what they had just seen. The horse was still lying on the ground, yet its breathing sounded a little steadier than before. Tom remained beside the horse. His knees ached from kneeling so long, but he did not move. He kept his hand on the horse's neck, feeling each breath as it came. He listened closely, not only with his ears but with his heart. Every small sign mattered to him. Mark stood a few steps away, watching carefully. He had seen sick horses recover before, but never like this. There was no clear reason for the change. Still, he could not deny what his eyes were seeing. "Should we bring it inside the stable?" one worker asked softly. "It's colder out here." Tom looked up for the first time. His eyes were calm but focused. "Not yet," he said. "Let it rest. Moving it now might be too much." Mark hesitated, then nodded. "We'll leave it here for now," he decided. "Keep the lanterns close." The workers adjusted the lights and stepped back again. The night air felt cooler, but it was peaceful. Crickets began to chirp in the distance, and the ranch felt still. Tom leaned closer to the horse and spoke quietly. He did not use fancy words. He spoke about the barn, the smell of hay, and the sound of hooves in the morning. He spoke about calm days and slow walks under the sun. His voice was steady, almost like a song without music. The horse's eyes opened a little more. It blinked slowly, as if trying to understand where it was. Its breathing remained slow, but no longer shaky. Tom smiled gently, though he tried not to show too much excitement. "You're doing well," he whispered. "Just keep breathing." Time passed quietly. Minutes felt like hours. The workers shifted their weight, fighting sleep, but none of them wanted to leave. Something important was happening, and they could feel it. At one point, the horse moved its front leg slightly. The movement was weak, but it showed effort. Tom placed his other hand gently near the leg, offering support without forcing anything. "That's enough," he said softly. "You don't have to move." Mark felt a lump in his throat. He had paid experts in the past. He had followed every rule and every guide. Yet here was Tom, a poor cowboy with no special training, doing what no one else could. "Why do you think this is working?" Mark asked quietly. Tom did not answer right away. He kept his eyes on the horse. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe it just needed someone to stay." Not to fix it. Just to be there. The words stayed in the air longer than expected. Later that night, Mark brought a blanket from the barn. Together, he and Tom carefully placed it over the horse's body, making sure not to startle it. The horse did not resist. Instead, it let out a long breath, almost like a sigh. "That's a good sign," one worker whispered. Tom nodded. He continued to stroke the horse's neck, slow and steady. He could feel a little warmth returning under his hand. The change was small, but real. As the night grew deeper, the ranch became silent. The moon rose high, casting a soft glow over the field. Tom's eyes grew heavy, but he refused to sleep. Every sound, every movement from the horse kept him alert. At one moment, the horse lifted its head just a little, then let it rest again. Tom gently supported it, careful not to push. "I've got you," he whispered. Mark watched, his thoughts drifting. He thought about how often people rushed through life, always trying to solve problems quickly. He wondered how many times something was lost simply because no one stayed long enough. Near midnight, the horse tried to pull its legs closer under its body. The effort was slow and shaky, but it showed strength that was not there before. Tom encouraged it quietly, praising each small movement. "That's it," he said. "Take your time." The workers gasped softly. One of them wiped his eyes, surprised by his own reaction. The horse rested again, breathing steady now. It was still weak, but it was no longer fading away. The danger had not passed, but the fight was no longer lost. Mark stepped forward and placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "You should rest," he said gently. "I can stay for a while." Tom shook his head. "I'm fine," he replied. "I'll rest when it's safe." Mark did not argue. He respected the quiet determination in Tom's voice. As the night slowly moved toward morning, a faint line of light appeared on the horizon. Tom noticed it and smiled softly. The horse was still breathing. Still here. For the first time since the horse collapsed, real hope filled the ranch. Not loud or proud, but quiet and strong. And at the center of it all was a poor cowboy, kneeling in the dirt, proving that care and patience could sometimes do what strength and money could not. Morning arrived slowly, bringing pale light across the ranch. The sky shifted from dark blue to soft gray, and the air felt cool and fresh. Birds began to call from the fence posts, their sounds gentle and steady. Tom was still kneeling beside the horse, his body stiff and tired, but his focus never left the animal. The horse was alive. That alone felt like a quiet miracle. Its breathing was no longer weak and broken. It was slow, deep, and steady. Tom placed his hand on the horse's chest and felt the rise and fall. Warmth had returned under its skin. He allowed himself a small smile, though he stayed careful. He knew the danger was not fully gone. Mark walked out from the barn carrying a cup of warm water. His steps were slow, as if he did not want to disturb the moment. He looked at the horse, then at Tom, and shook his head in disbelief. "I didn't think I'd see this," Mark said softly. Tom nodded. "It made it through the night," he replied. "That matters." The horse opened its eyes as the light grew brighter. This time, the eyes looked clearer. It blinked a few times, then turned its head slightly toward Tom's voice. The movement was small, but it was done with purpose. "That's good," Tom said quietly. "You're waking up." A few workers returned to the field, drawn by the news that the horse was still alive. They stood at a distance, careful and respectful. Some smiled. Others looked confused, as if they were seeing something they could not explain. One worker crouched down and touched the ground. "It's warmer today," he said. "That will help." Mark nodded. "We'll take it slow. No rushing." Tom agreed. He reached for the cup of water Mark brought and dipped his fingers in it. Gently, he touched the horse's mouth, letting it taste the water. The horse moved its lips slightly, responding to the feeling. "There you go," Tom said. "Just a little." The horse swallowed once. Then again. A quiet sound of surprise moved through the group. Drinking meant strength. Not much, but enough to show the body was trying again. Tom waited before offering more. He did not want to push. Patience had carried them this far, and he would not lose it now. As the sun rose higher, the horse tried to shift its body. Its legs moved slowly, trembling under its own weight. Tom placed his hands near its shoulders, not lifting, only guiding. "You don't have to stand yet," he said calmly. "Just get comfortable." The horse rested again, breathing steady. Sweat lightly covered its coat, but it was no longer cold. Mark brought another blanket and adjusted it carefully. "This feels different," Mark said. "Like it wants to live." Tom looked at him. "It always did," he replied. "We just needed to listen." Later in the morning, Mark made a decision. "We'll bring it into the stable," he said. "But slowly. No stress." The workers brought soft boards and ropes, moving with care. Tom stayed close, speaking gently to the horse the entire time. Together, they guided it toward the barn, step by careful step. The horse leaned heavily, but it moved. Each step was hard, yet it did not stop. Inside the stable, sunlight streamed through the open doors. The smell of clean hay filled the air. The horse seemed to relax the moment it entered, its ears moving as it recognized the familiar space. Tom helped it settle onto a thick bed of hay. The horse lowered itself carefully, then rested. Its breathing remained calm. Mark exhaled deeply. "I don't know how to thank you," he said to Tom. Tom shook his head. "I didn't do anything special," he replied. "I just stayed." Mark looked at him for a long moment. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do. Throughout the day, the horse rested. Tom stayed nearby, watching every movement. He spoke softly, keeping the same calm tone. The workers brought food, but Tom waited before offering it. He knew the body needed time. In the afternoon, the horse lifted its head and sniffed the hay. It took a small bite, then another. Tom watched closely, ready to stop if needed. But the horse continued, slow and careful. Mark smiled, unable to hide his relief. "That's a good sign," he said. Tom nodded. "It's choosing to fight." As the hours passed, the horse grew more alert. It followed Tom with its eyes. When Tom stood, it tried to rise again. This time, it managed to get one leg under its body before resting again. "That's enough for now," Tom said. "You did well." The workers began to speak about Tom differently. They no longer saw him as just a poor cowboy. They saw someone who understood something deeper. Something they had missed. That evening, Mark pulled Tom aside. "I want you to know," he said. "This ranch owes you. Not just for the horse, but for reminding us what matters." Tom looked uncomfortable. "I didn't do this for thanks," he said. "I did it because it felt right." Mark nodded. "I know." As night came again, Tom prepared to stay in the stable. He sat near the horse, leaning against the wall. His body ached, but his heart felt steady. The horse slept peacefully, its breathing slow and even. Outside, the ranch was quiet once more. But this time, the silence felt hopeful. The fight was not over. The road ahead would be long. But one thing was clear now. The horse was no longer alone. And neither was Tom. The next morning brought new energy to the ranch. Sunlight streamed into the stable, lighting up the wooden walls and the fresh hay on the ground. Tom woke early, stiff from sleeping on the floor, but he stood up quickly when he heard the horse move. The sound was soft, but clear. Hooves shifting. A low breath. Signs of life that still felt surprising. The horse was trying to rise. Tom moved closer at once. He did not rush. He placed one hand near the horse's shoulder and the other near its side, ready to help but careful not to push. The horse gathered its strength, shaking slightly, then lifted itself up. For a moment, it stood, unsteady but proud. "That's good," Tom said softly. "Easy now." The horse stood for several seconds before lowering itself again onto the hay. It was tired, but it had stood on its own. Tom felt a warm rush of relief spread through him. Mark entered the stable just in time to see the end of it. His eyes widened. "It stood," he said, almost afraid to say it out loud. Tom nodded. "Just for a bit," he replied. "But that's progress." Mark smiled and stepped closer. "I never thought I'd see this day." Throughout the morning, the ranch slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Workers repaired fences, fed animals, and moved tools, but many of them found excuses to pass by the stable. Each time, they looked at the horse with quiet amazement. Some whispered. Others smiled. A few shook their heads in disbelief. The horse rested most of the day, but it was alert now. It lifted its head when people entered and followed Tom with its eyes. When Tom spoke, its ears turned toward his voice. The connection between them was clear to anyone watching. Around midday, Mark brought a small amount of feed mixed with water. Tom watched closely as the horse smelled it, then took a careful bite. It ate slowly, pausing often, but it kept going. "That's enough for now," Tom said after a short while. He gently pulled the bowl away. "No rushing." Mark agreed. "We'll take it step by step." Later that afternoon, a sudden change came. The horse shifted awkwardly and let out a low sound. Its breathing grew faster, and it struggled to get comfortable. Tom noticed right away. He moved to its side and placed his hand on its neck. "Easy," he said calmly. "I'm here." Mark felt a knot of fear tighten in his chest. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Tom listened carefully, watching the horse's chest rise and fall. "It's tired," he said. "Healing takes energy. Sometimes the body fights back before it gets better." The workers stood quietly, worry returning to their faces. The memory of the first night was still fresh. Tom stayed close, speaking softly, keeping his hand steady. Slowly, the horse's breathing eased again. It rested its head on the hay and closed its eyes. Mark let out a long breath. "That scared me," he admitted. Tom nodded. "Me too," he said. "But setbacks happen. They don't mean failure." As evening approached, Tom helped the horse stand again. This time, it stood a little longer. Its legs still shook, but less than before. Mark supported from the other side, careful and patient. The horse took one step forward. Then, another. A quiet cheer moved through the stable, but Tom raised his hand gently. "Keep it calm," he said. "It's still working hard." The horse rested again after only a few steps, but its effort spoke louder than words. That night, Mark made a decision that surprised everyone. He gathered the workers near the barn and spoke clearly. "From now on, Tom will be in charge of this horse's recovery," he said. "We'll follow his lead." Some workers looked shocked. Others nodded, already understanding. Tom felt his face grow warm. "I'm not a trainer," he said. "I'm just doing what feels right." Mark looked at him seriously. "That's exactly why I trust you," he replied. The days that followed were slow but steady. Each morning, the horse stood a little longer. Each evening, it ate a little more. Tom kept the routine simple. Gentle movement. Rest. Quiet words. No pressure. The horse responded. One afternoon, a visitor arrived at the ranch, a man from a nearby town who had heard about the horse. He watched silently from the doorway as Tom worked. "You really believe this will last?" the man asked Mark. Mark did not hesitate. "I do," he said. "I've seen enough." Tom did not hear the conversation. He was focused on the horse, guiding it carefully as it walked a short distance across the stable. The horse's steps were slow but sure. Its eyes were bright now, filled with awareness. When the horse finally rested again, Tom leaned against the wall, exhausted but grateful. He looked at the animal and smiled. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly. That night, as the ranch settled into silence, Mark stood outside the stable for a long time. He thought about how close he came to giving up. How easy it would have been to walk away. Inside, Tom sat beside the horse, just as he had from the beginning. He did not think about praise or rewards. He only thought about staying present. The horse slept peacefully, its body rising and falling in a calm rhythm. The worst days were behind them now, but the journey was not finished. What had started as a quiet act of care had grown into something larger. Something that changed how everyone on the ranch saw strength, patience, and hope. And with each new day, the bond between a poor cowboy and a once dying horse grew stronger. Weeks passed, and the ranch changed in ways no one expected. The days grew brighter, and the air felt lighter. What once felt heavy with fear now carried quiet hope. The horse that everyone thought would not survive was standing every morning, walking slowly across the stable, and greeting the day with calm eyes. Tom kept his routine simple. At sunrise, he checked the horse's legs and breathing. He spoke softly, never raising his voice. He brushed the horse gently, careful around the spots that were still healing. The horse stood patiently, trusting his hands. Mark watched these moments often. He saw how the horse relaxed when Tom was near. It followed him with its eyes and leaned slightly toward his touch. This was not something that could be taught from books. It came from care and understanding. One morning, Tom opened the stable door and guided the horse outside. The sunlight touched its coat, and the horse lifted its head, taking in the open space. Its steps were slow but steady. The ground felt firm under its hooves. "That's it," Tom said calmly. "You remember this place." The horse took a few more steps, breathing deeply. It did not rush. It did not fear the movement. It trusted its body again. The workers gathered nearby, silent and respectful. Some smiled. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The memory of the horse lying still on the ground felt far away now, yet impossible to forget. Mark stepped forward. "I think it's ready to feel the field again," he said. Tom nodded. "A little at a time," he replied. "No pressure." They led the horse to a small open area near the stable. The grass was short and soft. The horse lowered its head and sniffed the ground before taking a careful bite. The simple act filled the air with quiet joy. As days passed, the horse grew stronger. It walked farther. It stood longer. Its eyes shone with life. Each step forward felt like a victory shared by everyone on the ranch. One afternoon, Mark asked Tom to sit with him on the fence. They watched the horse walk slowly across the field. "You saved more than a horse," Mark said. Tom looked confused. "I just did what anyone should," he replied. Mark shook his head. "Not everyone would have stayed when it looked hopeless. You reminded us that care matters as much as skill." Tom thought about that. He had never seen himself as important. He was just a poor cowboy doing honest work. But now, people greeted him differently. They listened when he spoke. They asked for his advice. Later that week, Mark made an announcement. He gathered everyone near the barn and spoke clearly. "Tom will be the head caretaker of our horses from now on," he said. "His place here is secure." Tom felt his chest tighten. He did not know what to say. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I won't let you down." Mark smiled. "You already proved that." The horse continued to recover. One early morning, Tom guided it across the field as the sun rose. The sky glowed with soft colors, and the grass shimmered with dew. The horse walked with confidence now, its steps strong and sure. Then something unexpected happened. The horse began to trot. It was slow and careful, but it was moving freely. Tom stopped walking and watched, his heart racing. The horse moved a short distance, then slowed and stopped, breathing steady. Tom laughed softly, unable to hold it in. "You did it," he said. The workers cheered quietly from a distance. Mark wiped his eyes and turned away for a moment. That evening, the ranch felt different. Laughter returned. Music played softly near the barn. People shared stories and meals. The horse stood calmly nearby, alive and strong, a symbol of what patience and care could do. Tom stayed close, as always. He brushed the horse one last time before nightfall. The horse lowered its head toward him, resting briefly against his shoulder. Mark watched from the doorway and felt a deep sense of gratitude. He thought about how close they came to giving up. How easily this story could have ended differently. As the stars filled the sky, Tom sat outside the stable, tired but peaceful. The horse rested inside, breathing slow and calm. This was not a story about money, tools, or status. It was about staying when it was easier to leave. About listening when others stopped believing. The poor cowboy had nothing special to offer except his time, his patience, and his heart. And in giving those, he saved a life. The ranch would remember this story for years. Not as a miracle, but as a lesson. That sometimes, love and care are the strongest forces of all.